Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Wednesday, August 17th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. It's happened again. Another inmate has died in custody. The 16th death in the jails this year. The news comes right after action by the county supervisors to stop those deaths. KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado says part of the plan is to hire hundreds of deputies.
There are hundreds of vacant positions in the San Diego County Sheriff's Department, and they've been losing experienced members to other departments.
Up until March of 2021, we were full. We were the agency that was full and that people wanted to come to. And it was a waiting list for people to be in our sheriff's department. But with all these other agents putting out incentives that put us behind, and now the Board of Supervisors with their decision, this helped us come back on par.
Chair Fletcher, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
That decision to offer more incentives to attract new employees and retain the ones they have. Some of the incentives include a 10% raise for jail nursing staff, 5% premium pay for deputies on the night shift, and a $20,000 signing bonus for officers who transfer to the department with at least 1 year experience. Plus, if they're from out of the area, they'll get a $15,000 relocation allowance. San Diego County Sheriff Anthony Ray says bringing on experienced officers is priceless. And while that $20,000 bonus sounds high, it's actually a huge savings over hiring new recruits.
That's about a year's worth of work, 6 months for the academy, 3 months for the base training, and about 3 months for the background process. That takes on the average about $100,000 for each person we put through there. So if you're putting 10 people into the academy, that would be $1 million for every 10 folks we're trying to hire.
The incentives are among a set of emergency actions taken by the board because of the recent increase in jail deaths, many because of drug overdoses.
We are facing the reality of a fentanyl and an opioid crisis that is impacting our entire community. Overdose deaths are up significantly across the county, and the jail population is a reflection of what is happening countywide. And so we see the increases outside the jails, we see the increases inside the jails, and in this case that compels us to ask what else can we do, what more can we do?
Ray says they're looking to hire about 300 sworn deputies and 125 medical staff. The supervisors still need to take a second vote on the incentives and other measures, but Ray is feeling confident.
We're anticipating a positive vote, and when they do approve on the next vote, on September 9th, that'll be the first day that the incentives start all across the boards.
Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
More North County schools were back in session today. Thousands of students returned to campuses in Oceanside, Vista, and Bonsall Unified School Districts. KPBS education reporter MG Perez tells us Poway Unified opened too, with some big changes.
The pep rally at Rancho Bernardo High School this morning was specifically for the new freshmen. Along with cheers and high energy, there were looks of uncertainty and maybe some nervousness.
I really hope we have a year of normalcy, but also I just really want to make it different and more fun, more welcoming, more engaging.
Several of the upperclassmen showed new students around campus. Rancho Bernardo High is one of 41 school sites in Poway Unified, the county's third largest school district with more than 35,000 students. This music video was released by district officials online last night, featuring students and teachers from many neighborhood schools. It was designed to motivate everyone going back to school to full-time in-person learning. At Rancho Bernardo High, students also have the benefit of $41 million in campus renovations and improvements. That includes significant climate-friendly landscaping and infrastructure. The school added 2 new psychologists and a full-time social worker, too.
Not every student after a pandemic feels like they belong at their school because everything they've gone through, a lot of emotional things, they belong here. And I want to make sure that everyone feels like they belong here.
And the basketball courts and racquetball courts are to the left.
Besides the new freshman class, this is really the first day of school on campus for many of the older students, too. That's a consequence of COVID and many of the other things that have happened in the world in the past few years.
I started 9th grade on a computer in Zoom, and that was probably the most sad thing for me high school because I wanted to have that whole high school experience, go to homecoming.
Ava Razon is now a junior who will graduate in the next school year. She and her friends are back on campus later in the morning because of the new California late start law. It requires high schools to begin at 8:30 a.m. and middle schools at 8 a.m.
I think the late start is actually a very good idea because we have so much course load. We're very pressured.
The workload is still the same, but we have less time to do our homework now just because sports will be in the afternoon and just because everything got pushed to later.
School is back in session, and that is something to cheer about. MG Perez, KPBS News.
As students are returning to class, many teachers are not. Coming up, why the U.S. Education Secretary says we are on the brink of a nationwide crisis. The Carlsbad community is mourning the loss of a mother who died after being hit by a car as she was riding her e-bike with her toddler. KPBS North County reporter Tanya Thorne says the family, advocates, and officials are calling for more safety on our roads and education on bike riding.
Flowers, candles, and pictures of Christine Hawk Embry can be seen on the corner of Basswood Avenue and Valley Street in Carlsbad. It's where the Carlsbad mom was hit by an SUV on August 7th while she was riding her e-bike with her 16-month-old daughter, Delilah. Embry died of her injuries, but her daughter was not hurt. On Tuesday night, Embry's husband, Bob, asked the Carlsbad City Council for safer roads. It wasn't his first appearance at a council meeting.
I came here a month ago to discuss two topics, public safety and the speeds at which people travel through neighborhoods.
At July's council meeting, Bob Embry asked for ways to slow traffic down in his Carlsbad neighborhood.
Never in a million years, I think 3 weeks later, my wife would be hit by a 42-year-old female who lived in the neighborhood, traveling approximately 40 miles an hour, and blew a stop sign. Thank God my daughter didn't die, but my wife wasn't so lucky.
Members of the Embry family called on city council members to act now to prevent future tragedies.
Ceramic road reflectors, dips or divots in the roads. Those would be the easiest solutions. Curb extensions, speed bumps, roundabouts.
William Radigan with the San Diego Bicycle Coalition says Christine's death is one of 4 in the last 8 days in San Diego County. But he says it's not because e-bikes are unsafe.
This tragedy being a wake-up call to how systemically unsafe our streets are.
Radigan says the use of e-bikes has exploded, especially among younger riders. He says city governments need to invest in road safety interventions to prevent more accidents from happening.
There's a lot that can be done to make a road safer. It's a systemic issue. You're not going to fix it by changing a few people's behavior. And I'm hopeful that this tragedy is going to show the city that these investments are worthwhile, even if they force people to drive a little bit slower.
Radigan says education is another key component for anyone on the road. Just this week, Governor Gavin Newsom signed a bill for an e-bike safety and education training program.
It creates the statewide standard of understanding how to use an e-bike, especially geared at minors.
The bill was presented by Encinitas Assemblymember Tasha Borner-Horvath.
It will create an e-bike safety training statewide. So every single parent, every single school district, anybody who wants access to how to ride an e-bike safely can access it.
She says the California Highway Patrol will be developing the statewide e-bike safety and education training program. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
More people are dying on the road. Roadway deaths have gone up 7% during the first 3 months of the year, in a trend that started 2 years ago. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says about 9,500 people died during that first quarter, which is a record not seen in 2 decades. Traffic deaths have risen since lockdowns eased in 2020, with more people on the road to go to work or even on road trips. People drove about 40 billion miles more during the first quarter of the year, an almost 6% increase from the year before. The United Kingdom has approved Omicron-specific booster vaccines, and they'll soon be coming to the U.S. The Biden administration says COVID vaccine makers could have them ready by next month, pending approvals. The booster in the UK targeting the original Omicron strain, while in the U.S. vaccines are being developed to fight Omicron's most recent subvariants. Dr. Eric Topol from the Scripps Research Translational Institute in La Jolla says the new doses arriving next month are ambitious.
I frankly think that's unlikely, but maybe in October or November we'll see it. In the meantime, the original vaccine booster works quite well to broaden our immunity. So that should be used.
Last week, the CDC updated some COVID-related guidance. Officials say instead of quarantine after exposure, to wear a high-quality mask for 10 days and get tested on day 5. If you have COVID, you should still isolate from others. It's been the summer of closed beaches in the South Bay, but tonight we're being told Mexican repair crews are making progress fixing 2 broken pipes that spewed millions of gallons of sewage across the U.S.-Mexico border. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson has the details.
August is turning into a brutal month for Imperial Beach, Coronado, and the rest of the South County shoreline.
The beach closures have been devastating for our community.
Imperial Beach City Council member Paloma Aguirre says residents are used to having the beach near the border closed, but the city's premier beach near the pier is affected this year. Water contact there was off limits for the last 9 weeks.
We're in the middle of the summer. We have families with small kids that they just want to take their kids to the beach. They can't because they're deathly afraid of contracting a disease, and as they should be, right?
A massive sewer line collapse in Tijuana is to blame for the contamination in August. 2 pipes burst at the end of July, allowing tens of millions of gallons of sewage to flow into the U.S. 1 pipe is almost fixed, allowing Mexican officials to start pumping sewage away from the border.
We'll still have the discharge to the ocean, but we'd rather have a discharge south of Tijuana, where it has more time to dilute in the ocean before it drifts up north.
The news is not as promising for the other pipe. It may not be repaired for another month.
It's in a worse condition. It's higher up on the hill. The slope is much more deteriorated, and it also straddles the border. So we need to arrange some access between Mexico coming into the U.S. to make the repairs.
U.S. and Mexican officials are consulting on the repair effort. U.S. officials say fixing the first pipe will likely stop the cross-border flows, but if there is rain, more sewage will enter the U.S. and reach the ocean. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
We are now under a statewide flex alert. The California Independent System Operator is urging all of us to cut back on power use until 9 p.m. Above normal temperatures are putting a strain on the power grid, so you're being asked to keep thermostats 78 degrees or higher and avoid using major appliances. Some relief from the heat may be on the way. Jeff Cornish has your forecast.
It's still warm out there, especially in the interior, but the inland heat is going to be reduced slightly in the days to come. So there is some good news there. We're kind of near the western fringe of the footprint of the monsoon moisture as well. And for those of us, the more populated areas along the coast, including in the big city, well, we're looking at that rhythm of patchy morning fog giving way to sunshine each afternoon. Take a look at the water vapor loop, pretty influential ridge of high pressure across the northwest. And you can see that we're still dealing with some dry air locally, but we do have some monsoon moisture, those blues. In fact, there's a little bit more moisture into the area just south of Arizona and especially south of New Mexico, tied to that tropical system that actually moved across Texas. It was not a named system. We haven't had a named storm in the Atlantic for more than 6 weeks now, but it did bring some significant rain, even though it was disorganized. Patchy fog late tonight, 69 degrees for your low in the metro and across San Diego County. Again, we're going to have that patchy morning fog return before before daybreak. To the east, though, the hot spot, Borrego Springs, a low of 82 tonight. And the monsoon moisture will be pretty significant and robust to our east on Thursday. We will see some spotty thunderstorms over the high ground of inland San Diego County on Thursday. Again, it won't be much to see here in Futurecast, but there will be at least the chance for a brief downpour that may not be handled all that well by small-scale features here on the model map. But as we take a look at the forecast overall, beyond those spotty storms into Borrego Springs and Mount Laguna, the rest of us mainly turning bright and dry through the afternoon as the humidity will be lowering as temperatures rise and that fog vanishes. Into Friday, we're dealing with more of the same really isolated storms to the east, but just generally pleasant and quiet weather for the coast. Morning low clouds, highest humidity early in the day. And we get a little warmer into the afternoon. Mid-80s, backing down from the upper 80s in the inland areas. Now for the mountains, look out for some spotty or stray thunderstorms Thursday and again Saturday and Sunday. And the deserts, we back off all the way down into the double digits briefly Friday before the triple digits return through the weekend. I'm meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
A year and a half ago, San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria announced a goal of building housing on top of new or renovated public facilities like libraries and fire stations. Earlier this year, the City Council passed an ordinance to make those kinds of projects easier. But as KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen explains, the city is still far away from putting its new policy into practice.
And the reason why we're here today is the construction of a new Oak Park branch library.
Last month, Mayor Gloria gathered with several colleagues to make an exciting announcement. The state of California was giving San Diego $20 million to help design and construct a new library for Oak Park. When I heard the news, my mind immediately went back to the mayor's 2021 State of the City address. Among a slew of new housing policies, Gloria said this:
"We know that real estate is at a premium in San Diego, which is why I will implement plans to incorporate housing when we redevelop or build new city facilities. This could mean building apartments on top of new libraries and fire stations. And I will take a thoughtful approach to make sure that our transit system and our infrastructure can support these new units."
So I had to ask, will Oak Park's new library be the first in San Diego to include housing? The answer is no. The mayor's office says the project is too far along to change, and delays could jeopardize the state funding. But there have been conversations in other neighborhoods about mixing libraries with housing.
It really started out as a conversation about how to get a new library and how to get a larger library.
I meet Aria Punaki outside the North Park Library. It has a lot in common with the old library in Oak Park that's due to be replaced. It's more than 50 years old. It's small, and it doesn't have the kind of things people need from their libraries nowadays, like community meeting rooms. Punaki helped lead a discussion at the North Park Planning Committee earlier this year about building a new library with housing on top.
Because we do have a nice sized lot here, and you know, as the community's been growing over time, you know, there's a common criticism that there isn't enough infrastructure being invested at the same time that we have all this new growth. And so how can we incorporate, you know, a way to tackle the housing crisis and create this infrastructure for our new larger population here in North Park?
The response Punaki got from city officials wasn't encouraging. North Park isn't anywhere near the top of the list when it comes to getting new libraries. Other neighborhoods like Oak Park have even greater needs. And absent a large charitable donation to kickstart the process, the city isn't likely to redevelop this land anytime soon. Still, Punaki hasn't given up on the idea. The library is surrounded by new apartment buildings, and it's in one of the city's most walkable, transit-rich neighborhoods.
This is a really ideal place to incorporate not only these, you know, the public good of a library, but the public good of maybe affordable housing as well.
As I say, the walls are separating from the foundation. That's never good.
Less than a mile away sits another deteriorating city building, the North Park Community Adult Center. That's where I meet Stephen Russell, head of the nonprofit San Diego Housing Federation. He says when public assets like these reach the end of their useful life, it's incumbent on city officials to reimagine them, and the land is too valuable to build just one story.
But if we have a single-story building, what are we putting above it? You know, it is a wasted opportunity if we aren't in some manner making use of that space. Single-story buildings in a built environment like this is always a wasted opportunity.
But there's an extra complication with this building. It's part of the North Park Community Park. When the City Council passed an ordinance last February to streamline housing built on top of public facilities, it excluded facilities located on parkland. Russell says he's not sure that makes sense, especially when a building already exists, and making it taller wouldn't require sacrificing any actual parkland. Adding housing to the park might even make it safer.
And I think in North Park, in particular, you have a park that is, unobserved. There's lots of illicit activities that have gone on in the past. Maybe having more apartments, more eyes on the street, more eyes on the green, maybe, would actually help the situation.
City officials were not able to name a single library, fire station, rec center, or other public facility where there are concrete plans in motion to incorporate housing. But they did get a grant to study the concept's feasibility more closely. A report is due out sometime next year. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Renters across the country are facing more worries about paying for housing. Nearly 60% of people were hit with a rent increase during the past year. That's according to a study from Freddie Mac. Just 38% of those renters say they saw an increase in take-home pay. The study also found higher housing costs and inflation have altered the plans for many potential home buyers. Nearly 3/4 of renter households who were planning to buy a home say that's become more out of reach over the past year. Students are heading back to school, but not all teachers are. So many educators have left the profession that it's causing shortages in some districts. As Amy Kiley reports, the education secretary says communities need to take action now.
We're at the doorstep of a crisis.
Some U.S. schools can't hire enough qualified teachers to fully staff their classrooms.
If we don't take it seriously, we're going to be facing what we experienced during the Omicron spread.
Some Florida schools are so desperate, the governor wants to recruit military veterans and others who don't have education degrees.
We also want to include first responders who have their bachelor's degree to become teachers.
And it's not just teachers. Bus drivers can be hard to hire these days. In a district near Milwaukee, Wisconsin, one principal and athletic director are applying for commercial driver's licenses to help.
We had to find creative ways to get our athletic teams to events.
So why are educators leaving the field? Some experts cite COVID-19.
We are sending out tens of millions of tests to school districts, and Congress allocated tens of billions of dollars to schools for improving ventilation.
Others cite diminished control as lesson content becomes politicized. Education is also a demanding field with comparatively low pay. The Economic Policy Institute says last year, public school teachers made almost 24% less than other college graduates.
Teachers have to get other jobs. They're driving Uber on the weekends.
I'm Amy Kiley reporting.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, what Representative Liz Cheney's election loss says about former President Trump's influence on the Republican Party. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Many local nonprofits work to help make lives better, and today on National Nonprofit Day, we take a look at Wounded Warrior Homes. The organization works with veterans who've been injured to help get them ready for life as a civilian. U.S. Air Force veteran David Teal is the first to live in a brand new 500-square-foot ADU. He suffers from a traumatic brain injury in 2007 when he served in Afghanistan.
I experienced a vehicle bomb at the base that I was at, and it really impacted my life significantly with nightmares and dealing with anxiety and just dealing with loud noises. He plays it on the...
Teal says he feels comfortable and relaxed in his home. Wounded Warriors has 3 different properties for veterans who are almost ready to live on their own. 2 San Diego legends, 2 masters of their craft, 2 Teds with both of their former homes for sale. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer takes a look at the very different homes.
So pitches, Williams swings, there's a high drive, going deep.
Teddy Ballgame, the splendid splinter, the kid. Ted Williams was known by many names. The Baseball Hall of Famer is best known for his time playing on the Boston Red Sox and as a military veteran. But all of his greatness began here in San Diego, where he grew up. His childhood home in North Park is now up for sale, according to former San Diego Padres broadcaster Bob Chandler.
And at one time, the Major League Padres had thought about maybe buying that house and turning it into a baseball shrine, like a Hall of Fame and so forth. But obviously it didn't happen.
At the same time that Williams' childhood home is on the market, so is the house once owned by world-famous children's book author Ted Geisel, better known as Dr. Seuss. While the baseball legend's former home is a humble one-story bungalow, Geisel's home is an expansive hilltop mansion in La Jolla. Jason Berry is co-owner of the real estate firm Berry Estates, which was selected to list the home by the current owner of the property, University of California, San Diego.
You look at the front door, we have the etched glass of the hat of the Cat in the Hat. And then I was mentioning the pool in here too. You've got the bow tie of the Cat in the Hat.
Back in North Park, Williams' childhood home on Utah Street is easy to miss. That's partly because there's no sign or monument that marks the house.
It's not very far from this athletic field, and he used to go there, as the story goes, from morning till night with a bat and a baseball, and he'd throw it up and hit it and play in any game and whatever. And that's where he honed himself. It was in North Park.
The former house of the Cat in the Hat author is on the market for the first time in over 75 years. And Barry says Geisel's late wife, Audrey, kept some of the place in its original state.
Supposedly, we haven't confirmed this yet, but the library and the office and then the tower up above were part of the original house that then she rebuilt around, and that's where he did a lot of his work.
The Williams home sale is currently pending for $925,000. Meanwhile, Dr. Seuss's Hilltop Mansion is listed at nearly $19 million for the house and surrounding property. Offers closed just minutes ago for the La Jolla home after the 5 p.m. deadline today, with a decision to come tomorrow by UC Regents. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.